You already know more than you think. You just don't know how to read the signs yet. Think about it. How many times have you trusted someone's words only to feel the sting of betrayal later? How often have you smiled back at someone, sensing deep down that their kindness was only a mask? The truth is uncomfortable. Most people are not who they appear to be. Their words are rehearsed, their confidence borrowed, their happiness performed. And yet, the Stoics taught that every mask eventually cracks, that no lie can fully silence the truth that burns beneath the surface. If you dare to see beyond appearances, you'll uncover not just who others are, but who you are in relation to them. This isn't about judgment, it's about liberation. Because once you see clearly, you can no longer be deceived, and you can finally live with the strength of someone unshaken by illusion. If you feel that pull toward clarity, please subscribe. As a choice for yourself, a commitment to wisdom, to growth, and to walking the Stoic path toward truth in a world built on masks. Truth 1. Everyone wears a mask. People often wonder why relationships can feel so confusing. Why do we sometimes trust someone only to later feel deceived? Why does the person who looks the happiest often carry the deepest sadness? The uncomfortable truth is that people rarely reveal who they really are. What you see on the surface is not the whole picture. It's a mask, carefully built through years of trying to survive in a world that demands conformity. The Stoics understood this well. They knew that human beings craft personas the way a soldier crafts armor. Not because we want to be fake, but because life has taught us that showing our true selves can be risky. Think about it. As children, we learn very quickly what earns us approval and what earns us rejection. Some kids find that being funny makes them liked, so they carry that humor into adulthood, even on days when they feel crushed inside. Others discover that toughness earns respect, so they walk through life with a hardened shell, even if that shell is hiding tenderness and fear. This is why the world often feels like a stage. Carl Jung once said, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself, as well as others, think one is." The persona, or the mask, is not necessarily evil. It helps us navigate society, but it's not the truth. Pay attention to the small cracks, the laugh that lasts too long, the sudden avoidance of eye contact when something personal is mentioned, the shift in tone when a sensitive subject arises. These are the moments where the mask trembles and the real person shows for just a second. Let's make this real with examples. You might know someone who always positions themselves as the strong one. They never complain. They carry everyone else's burdens, and they appear unshakable. But watch closely, and you'll notice tension in their jaw when they're alone, or the way they suddenly grow quiet when vulnerability creeps into a conversation. Their mask of strength exists to protect the fragility underneath. On the flip side, the always cheerful person, the one making jokes, smiling through every difficulty, may not be cheerful at all. Humor becomes their survival strategy. The mask of joy shields them from confronting sadness they can't bear to admit, either to others or themselves. From a Stoic point of view, recognizing masks is not about becoming judgmental or cynical. It's about compassion, because once you see that someone's arrogance is actually a mask for insecurity, or that someone's endless cheer is actually a defense against despair, you stop taking things personally, you stop being deceived, and instead of reacting with anger, you start responding with patience. That's the other half of this truth. It's not just about reading others, it's about reading yourself. We all wear masks, whether we admit it or not. Maybe your mask is ambition, always staying busy so no one asks about your pain. Maybe it's humor, maybe it's silence, maybe it's control. If you want to see others clearly, you first have to ask, What mask do I wear to survive? This is a deeply Stoic practice, not self-condemnation, but self-awareness. To strip away your own illusions so you can live closer to truth. Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Examining your masks is part of that. Ask yourself, when do I feel the need to perform? When do I laugh, not because something's funny, but because I don't want to answer the real question? When do I put on strength, not because I feel strong, but because I fear being weak? By confronting these questions, you begin to dissolve the distance between the mask and the true self. Now, let's circle back to how this helps you read others. Imagine you're in a conversation with someone who constantly interrupts. The mask says, "I'm confident, I know what I'm talking about." But if you look past the mask, you might see the truth. "I'm afraid of being ignored." Or consider someone who brags endlessly about their achievements. The mask says, "I'm successful." The truth whispers, "I'm terrified that I'm not enough." Once you see this pattern, it's impossible to unsee. And that's powerful, because it not only makes you harder to deceive, it also makes you harder to hate. Aristotle observed, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Knowing others follows the same path." The moment you realize everyone is hiding something, not out of malice but out of fear, you stop expecting perfection. You stop demanding authenticity on command. Instead, you learn to look for glimpses of the real self that shine through the cracks. And those glimpses, though small, are more valuable than the entire mask someone presents. And this is where Stoicism offers something more than just psychological insight. It gives us a moral direction. The goal of reading masks is not to manipulate or exploit people. It's to live wisely, with less illusion. It's to extend compassion when others seem unbearable. Because once you realize that the critic is hiding a wounded child, or the bully is masking fear, your response changes. You gain freedom. You stop being reactive. Here's a practical step you can try immediately. The next time you're in a conversation, instead of just listening to the words, observe the body language. Watch for the flicker in the eyes when a sensitive subject comes up. Notice the way someone shifts in their seat when they're uncomfortable, or the forced laugh that doesn't match the tone of the moment. These small signals are cracks in the mask. If you can catch them, you'll see the person more clearly than they may see themselves. But also, catch yourself. Notice when you slip into your own mask. Maybe you smile when you don't mean it. Maybe you say, "I'm good," when you're not. Maybe you hide behind sarcasm when you're actually hurt. The Stoic path is about living in alignment with truth, and that begins with honesty toward yourself. So the next time you look at someone and feel that something doesn't add up, don't dismiss it. Pay attention. People reveal themselves in the smallest of ways, and when you learn to notice the slips, you'll see that everyone is fighting the same battle, the battle between the mask they wear and the truth they fear. Recognizing that won't make you colder, it'll make you wiser, and it'll open the door to connections that go beyond the surface. Truth 2. Criticism is confession. It's easy to get defensive when someone criticizes you. A harsh comment, a mocking tone, a judgment that stings, and suddenly your guard goes up. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that criticism tells us something about us. But the truth, the deeper truth, is that criticism reveals more about the critic than the one being judged. People rarely attack out of pure clarity. They attack because something within them has been stirred, something unresolved, something they don't want to face. What they point at in others often mirrors what they're trying to hide in themselves. Think about the last time you heard someone endlessly complain about another person's arrogance. He's so full of himself. She's always bragging. They think they're better than everyone. That kind of constant critique feels personal. But if you look closely, it's usually a confession. Behind the accusations lives a deep insecurity. Maybe the critic fears they're not good enough, so arrogance in others triggers their own hidden longing to be admired. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." What you resent outside of you is often a reflection of what you've repressed inside. This is why criticism often feels exaggerated. When someone despises dishonesty in others, it may be because they themselves struggle to be fully honest. When someone relentlessly mocks emotional people, it may be because they're terrified of their own emotions. It's projection. The Stoics would say the battlefield isn't out there, it's in here, within our minds. Let's make this practical. Imagine you're at work and a colleague constantly accuses others of being lazy. They never stop pointing out who isn't doing enough. On the surface, it looks like they're just concerned with productivity. But if you step back, you might realize this person is deeply insecure about their own worth. They fear being seen as unproductive, so they project that fear outward, attacking others for what they're most afraid to be. Or picture the friend who can't stop gossiping about how fake everyone else is. They're obsessed with exposing inauthenticity. But beneath that obsession may live a painful truth. They themselves feel inauthentic, disconnected from their real self, and gossip becomes their way of deflecting from that wound. Once you start to see this, your relationship with criticism changes forever. Instead of reacting with immediate hurt, you pause. You step into the Stoic mindset, calm, observant, curious. You ask yourself, what does this reveal about them? What are they wrestling with that makes this trait in me so unbearable for them to see? It's not always easy, but it transforms judgment into insight. It allows you to hold on to your peace instead of letting someone else's pain dictate your emotions. Here's the empowering part. This truth doesn't just help you understand others, it helps you understand yourself. Ask yourself honestly, what bothers you most in other people? Do you hate arrogance? Maybe you're struggling with your own need to be validated. Do you hate dishonesty? Maybe there are truths in your own life you haven't fully admitted. Do you hate weakness in others? Maybe you're terrified of being vulnerable. Criticism is a mirror. What you condemn in others may be pointing towards something you need to heal in yourself. Socrates offered a clue when he said, "Let him that would move the world first move himself." If you want to grow, start by examining the patterns of criticism in your own mind. Each judgment you make may be a confession waiting to be recognized. The Stoic practice here is self-scrutiny. To notice when your irritation is less about reality and more about your own fears echoing back at you. Imagine you're scrolling online and you find yourself rolling your eyes at someone posting endless selfies. Before you criticize, pause. Ask yourself, why does this bother me? Is it because I truly value humility? Or is it because I too crave recognition but feel ashamed to admit it? The more you practice this, the more honest you become with yourself. And the more honest you are with yourself, the less power criticism from others will hold over you. And this is where compassion enters the picture. When you see criticism as confession, you stop hating people for their harshness. Instead, you see them as human beings battling themselves. The person who mocks emotions is confessing they're scared of feeling. The person who calls others weak is confessing they don't feel strong inside. The person who tears down others' success is confessing their own longing for achievement. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it softens your heart. You may still protect yourself from cruelty. The Stoics weren't naive, but you won't waste energy on hatred. Here's a practice you can try. The next time someone criticizes you, instead of rushing to defend yourself, breathe. Let the words land, but don't let them define you. Then quietly ask, what does this reveal about them? Not in a mocking way, but in a curious philosophical way. Their criticism may say more about their story than about your character. And if there's truth in what they say, use it. If there isn't, let it go. Either way, you win. Criticism is confession. Once you understand this, you step into a new kind of freedom. You no longer carry the weight of every harsh word. You no longer let other people's projections shape your peace. You become, as the Stoics taught, anchored, not swayed by the winds of opinion, but rooted in clarity. So the next time someone tears into you, don't just hear their words. Listen for the confession hidden beneath. It might change how you see them, and if you're brave enough, it might change how you see yourself. Truth 3. Silence is louder than words. There's a strange tension that fills the air when someone goes quiet. You've probably felt it before. You ask a direct question, maybe something personal, and instead of an answer you get hesitation, a pause, a quick change of subject. They might laugh it off or reply with a short, vague line that feels rehearsed. On the surface, it seems like nothing, just silence. But if you pay close attention, that silence is full of meaning. It tells you more about a person's truth than their carefully chosen words ever could. Human beings are masters of language. From childhood, we are trained to use words as shields, to protect ourselves, to avoid judgment, to gain approval. We learn what's safe to say and what's better left unsaid. But in those moments when words disappear, when the mask slips for just a second, you catch a glimpse of what someone really feels. Silence becomes a confession. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius reflected, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And even when people choose not to speak, their silence still carries the color of their inner world. Think about an argument. Sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't the most truthful, the one shouting, defending, insisting. They're often trying to drown out their own doubt. But the person who suddenly grows quiet when a topic hits too close, that quietness reveals a kind of truth. It's the unspoken admission. This hurts me, this scares me, this touches something I don't want to expose. Words may be manipulated, but silence leaks the raw reality. Seneca offered a perspective that applies here. Speech is the index of the mind. But notice, it's not just the speech itself, but also the lack of it. What someone chooses not to say is as telling as what they do. When someone dodges a question about their past, when they gloss over a painful subject, when they give a flat answer where emotion should be, that silence becomes the index of their fear. You're not just hearing words, you're hearing the boundaries of what they can't yet face. Consider an everyday example. Imagine asking a friend how they're really doing after a breakup. They smile and say, "I'm fine," but their voice is flat. Their eyes look away, and they change the subject immediately. That silence between the words, that subtle pause, is a louder truth. They're not fine. They just don't feel safe admitting it. Or think about a coworker who avoids conversations about mistakes. They'll talk endlessly about their successes, but the moment a failure is mentioned, the conversation suddenly dries up. That avoidance is the silence that reveals the wound. This is why silence is so powerful to read. Words are often crafted for survival. People lie without even realizing it, repeating stories they've told themselves until they believe them. But silence resists polish. It slips out in the cracks. Now here's where the Stoic perspective adds depth. When you notice silence, the goal isn't to judge, it's to understand. The temptation is to label avoidance as weakness, but the Stoics remind us that all people carry burdens. Everyone has truths they're not ready to face. Instead of reacting with frustration, you can approach those silences with compassion, because chances are you have your own. Think of the moments you've stayed quiet when you could have spoken. Times you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't. Times you avoided vulnerability because it felt too raw. Silence connects us because it's a shared human defense. If you want to examine life, both your own and others, you need to learn to study silence. Silence tells you where the examination has stopped, where fear has drawn a line, and often those are the very places where healing is needed. If you listen carefully, silence shows you not just who someone is, but where they're still hiding. Let's explore this further with relationships. In close relationships, silence becomes even louder. A partner who falls silent during discussions about the future may be carrying uncertainty they can't admit. A friend who never talks about their family may be holding on to unhealed wounds. The silence around these subjects is not random. It's protective. And when you notice it, you're given a choice. You can push and demand answers, or you can approach with patience and empathy, creating a space where that silence eventually feels safe enough to turn into words. And that's the empowering part. Silence doesn't have to remain permanent. With courage, silence can be broken. The Stoics encouraged speaking truth, but with wisdom and restraint. They didn't advocate spilling everything recklessly, but they did believe in honesty as a path to inner peace. Here's a practical step you can try. Next time you're in a conversation, instead of rushing to respond, pause. Listen not just to what's said, but to what isn't. Notice the hesitation, the quick deflections, the short answers that don't match the depth of the question. Ask yourself, what truth might be hiding in that silence? And in your own life, journal about the things you avoid talking about. You'll be surprised how much you learn about yourself by examining your silences. But remember, reading silence is not about exposing people, it's about understanding. The Stoics taught that wisdom isn't about control, it's about clarity. When you see silence for what it is, you stop being fooled by words alone. You start reading the spaces between, and in those spaces you discover a deeper layer of truth. Plato, reflecting on human nature, once wrote, "Wise men talk because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." But there's another layer. Sometimes wise men stay silent, not because they have nothing to say, but because the truth feels too heavy to voice. That silence is not foolishness, it's fear, and fear is always worth noticing. The more you practice this, the more you'll realize how loud silence can be. It echoes in relationships, in workplaces, in friendships. It tells you what people can't yet admit, and it tells you where you too still carry unspoken stories. The Stoic way is to see this clearly, without bitterness, to understand that silence is not emptiness, but a map of where healing is needed. So the next time someone goes quiet after a tough question, don't dismiss it. Don't rush past it. Pause and pay attention. That silence is not nothing. It's a clue, a window, a whisper of truth. And once you learn to hear it, you'll never hear conversations the same way again. Truth 4. Loud virtue signals weak character. We live in a world where appearances often matter more than reality. You've probably noticed it. People constantly broadcasting their goodness, their kindness, their values, as if they're putting on a show for the world to clap for. Social media has made this even louder. The endless declarations of purity, honesty, or moral superiority often feel staged, and deep down, you know something isn't right. Because when a person is truly virtuous, they don't need to convince anyone. Their actions speak for themselves. It's the loud signals, the constant reminders, the exaggerated performance that should make you pause and look deeper. Think about it in everyday life. The person who constantly preaches about honesty is often the one bending the truth when it suits them. The person who brags about humility is usually hungry for recognition. The person who loudly condemns others' flaws often hides the same flaws within themselves. Seneca, in his writings, warned against this very performance. He wrote, "The wise man is content with himself." That line is powerful because it points to the essence of real virtue. If you are truly virtuous, you don't need to announce it. You don't need applause, validation, or public recognition. You know who you are, but the one who constantly signals their moral superiority is not content. They're restless, uneasy, desperate for others to confirm the image they're trying to project. Let's bring this down to a human level. Imagine two people. One quietly donates to charity, never mentioning it, never seeking acknowledgement. The other makes sure everyone knows about their donation, posting pictures, attaching inspirational captions, reminding people of their generosity. Which of these two has the stronger character? The answer is obvious. But here's the deeper question. Why does the second person feel the need to broadcast? Often, it's because they're trying to convince themselves. By loudly signaling their virtue, they silence the insecurity that whispers, "Maybe you're not as good as you think." True virtue is consistent action, not one-time performance. It's lived in private when no one is watching. It's the daily choices to act with integrity even when no applause will follow. Virtue signaling, on the other hand, is about acts, visible moments designed for others to see. And that's the great divide. One is habit, one is theatre. This truth becomes even clearer when you pay attention to those who condemn others most loudly. Have you ever noticed how the harshest critics of immorality often end up caught in scandals themselves? It's not coincidence. It's confession. By loudly projecting their righteousness, they cover up what they're ashamed to face. Epictetus taught his students to avoid this trap. He said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That line cuts through centuries and still stings today. If you live with honesty, you don't need to remind people of your honesty. If you live with kindness, you don't need to advertise your kindness. The moment you feel the need to shout it, chances are you've already strayed from it. Loud virtue isn't about embodying, it's about persuading. Consider the way this plays out in relationships. A friend who constantly insists on how real and loyal they are may not be either. Their repeated declarations raise a red flag. Why? Because when loyalty is genuine, it doesn't require self-promotion. It simply exists. Or think of the person in a workplace who constantly brags about being a team player. If you watch closely, you'll often see them undermining others when it benefits them. Their words and their actions don't align. The louder the words, the weaker the alignment. Virtue signaling flips this upside down. It's all about appearing, not being. It focuses on reputation without substance. But the Stoic way is to focus on being, letting reputation follow naturally or not at all. Now let's reflect on ourselves, because it's easy to see this truth in others, but harder to admit in our own lives. Ask yourself, when do I signal virtue instead of living it? Do I sometimes brag about honesty because deep down I'm afraid of my own half-truths? Do I overemphasize kindness in public while struggling with resentment in private? We've all done it. It's part of being human. The goal isn't to shame ourselves, but to recognize the moments when signaling takes over substance. That recognition is the first step back to authenticity. In today's world, where public image is currency, this truth is more urgent than ever. People curate their lives to appear flawless, moral, and strong. But the Stoic approach reminds us that inner reality matters more than outer appearance. A quiet act of integrity outweighs 1,000 loud performances. And if you want to read people accurately, this is the key. The louder they need to prove their virtue, the more fragile it usually is. Plato also warned against mistaking shadows for reality. In his allegory of the cave, he showed how people can become trapped watching mere appearances instead of truth. Virtue signaling is a modern version of those shadows. It looks like morality, but it's not the real thing. It's a projection, a performance, a flicker on the wall. The task is to turn away from the shadow and seek the substance. And here's the personal challenge. Strive to live your values so quietly, so consistently, that you never need to announce them. Let your actions be your proof. If you're honest, people will notice. If you're kind, people will feel it. If you're loyal, people will experience it. No announcement required. That's the Stoic way. So the next time you encounter someone who loudly proclaims their virtue, don't be fooled by the performance. Look deeper. Ask yourself, is this lived or is this staged? And in your own life, resist the temptation to advertise your goodness. Just live it, because real strength never needs a microphone. Truth 5. People lie to themselves first. One of the hardest things to accept about human nature is this. People are not only dishonest with others, they're dishonest with themselves. In fact, most lies don't begin as an attempt to trick the outside world. They begin inside, whispered in the quiet moments of fear, shame, or regret. Think about how many times you've heard someone say, "I'm fine," when it's clear they're not. Or, "I don't care anymore," when their heart is still burning with care. Or, "I'm over it," when you can feel the bitterness sitting in their voice. These aren't calculated attempts to mislead others. They're practice stories meant to convince the self. Self-deception is one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. Why? Because reality can be unbearable. When the truth feels too heavy, too painful, too threatening to who we think we are, the mind invents a version we can live with. It's not always malicious. Sometimes it's survival. The Stoics were deeply aware of this tendency. They didn't see self-deception as harmless. They saw it as dangerous, a kind of prison that prevents growth. Seneca warned, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" That question digs at the core of self-deception, because often the lies we tell ourselves are delays. I'll change tomorrow. I'll face it when I'm ready. I'll deal with it later. But later stretches into years, and the lies calcify into a life that never moves forward. Consider an example we all know: heartbreak. When someone has been rejected or abandoned, they often say, "I don't care." It's the easiest lie to tell. But if you look into their eyes, if you listen closely, you'll hear the tremble in their tone. They care more than they want to admit. The lie is a shield against pain, but it also blocks healing, because you can't truly heal from something you refuse to acknowledge. Another form of self-deception is pretending to be over failures. People often say, "That didn't matter," or "It wasn't important anyway." But if it really didn't matter, they wouldn't need to insist so strongly. The repetition of the phrase is a tell. Deep down, the sting remains, but the mind has built a protective story around it. This is why the Stoics put so much emphasis on aligning perception with truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change, for I seek the truth by which no one was ever truly harmed." That's the opposite of self-deception. It's radical honesty, the willingness to see clearly, even when it's painful. But why is lying to ourselves so common? The answer lies in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. Here's the paradox. Self-deception feels protective in the moment, but destructive over time. Think about someone in a toxic relationship. They might say, "It's not that bad," or "They'll change," over and over. The story comforts them in the short term because facing the truth, that they're trapped in something harmful feels overwhelming, but the longer they hold on to the lie, the more they suffer. Let's put this into real life. Imagine someone says, "I've moved on," but their body stiffens at the mention of an old partner's name, or someone insists, "I'm not jealous," while their eyes flash with envy. Or they repeat, "I'm fine," so often it begins to sound mechanical. These are clues. They show that the lie isn't meant for you, it's meant for themselves. And if you want to truly read people, you have to listen not just to their words, but to the tension underneath. But self-deception is the enemy of knowing yourself. That's why so many people live in contradiction, saying one thing while doing another. They insist they don't want love but chase it endlessly. They insist they don't need approval but crumble without it. They insist they're strong but avoid situations that test them. The contradiction isn't hypocrisy, it's blindness. They've convinced themselves of a story, and the story is running their life. Here's the empowering message. You can use this truth not only to read others, but to liberate yourself. Start by asking, what lies do I tell myself? Do I say I'm fine when I'm not? Do I minimize my pain because I fear it will overwhelm me? Do I pretend I don't care so I don't have to face disappointment? These are difficult questions, but the Stoic path is about courage. Think of the times you've denied your own feelings. Maybe you pretended you weren't hurt by someone's words, but carried the sting for weeks. Maybe you told yourself a goal didn't matter when you failed, even though it mattered deeply. Each time, the lie delayed your growth. The Stoics would urge you to face the sting directly, to accept the pain without adding the second layer of deception. Pain, they taught, is part of life, but self-deception multiplies it, creating suffering out of denial. Aristotle spoke about virtue as living in alignment with reason and truth. He believed that happiness comes from living in accordance with reality, not illusion. That's why people who lie to themselves often seem restless, unfulfilled, even when they claim to be fine. Their inner life is split. They've chosen comfort over truth, and comfort never lasts. So how do we move past this? How do we stop lying to ourselves? The first step is awareness. Pay attention to your own words. Notice when you repeat phrases like, "I don't care," "It doesn't matter," or "I'm fine." Ask yourself, is this real, or am I trying to protect myself? The second step is courage. Have the bravery to admit when you're hurt, jealous, scared, or not over something. The Stoics would say that honesty with yourself is the foundation of strength. Because once you face reality, you can work with it. You can heal, adapt, grow. The same goes for how you read others. Don't just take their words at face value. Look for the mismatch between their story and their signals. If someone says they've moved on but can't stop talking about the past, believe the behavior, not the words. If someone claims they're fine but their body language screams otherwise, trust the tension. People may lie to themselves, but their lies always leave cracks. And if you can see the cracks, you can see the truth. Self-deception is humanity's oldest trick, but it doesn't have to rule you. The Stoics believed that freedom comes from seeing clearly yourself and others. Once you strip away the lies, you begin to live in alignment with reality. And reality, though painful at times, is the only ground strong enough to build a meaningful life on. So remember this. The next time you hear someone say, "I'm fine," pause. Look past the words. Ask yourself, are they telling me the truth, or are they trying to tell it to themselves? That small shift in perception will change how you see people forever. And if you're willing to turn the same question inward, it will change how you see yourself too. Truth 6. Superiority masks inferiority. We've all met that person who walks into a room and makes sure everyone knows exactly how important they are. Maybe they brag endlessly about their achievements. Maybe they interrupt every conversation to remind you of what they've done. Or maybe they subtly, or not so subtly, belittle others to keep themselves on top. At first they can seem confident, even intimidating, but if you look closer, if you peel back the layers, you'll often see something else hiding underneath. That performance of superiority. It's usually a mask, and behind it is something fragile, a deep fear of being overlooked, dismissed, or forgotten. The Stoics were masters at seeing through appearances like this. They believed that real strength doesn't need to prove itself. Seneca wrote, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." Notice what he's implying. Greatness isn't about bragging once you've arrived. It's about enduring the road quietly. People who constantly need to announce their greatness are usually showing you the opposite, how insecure they are about whether it's real. Carl Jung put this into psychological terms. He said, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, love is lacking." Think about that. When someone seeks domination, control, or superiority, it's not because they're overflowing with confidence, it's because they're lacking something essential inside. They chase superiority to fill a void. The louder they boast, the emptier they often feel. Let's make this practical with an example. Imagine a co-worker who can't stop reminding everyone of their accomplishments. Every meeting, every project somehow turns into a chance for them to highlight their own value. On the surface, it looks like confidence, but if you watch closely, you'll notice something telling. They're desperate for recognition. They fear that if they stop proving themselves for even a moment, they'll disappear in the eyes of others. Their superiority is not strength. It's protection against their own feelings of inferiority. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on his own role as emperor, reminded himself daily not to fall into this trap. He wrote, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Self-indulgence means tying it to the things that happen to you. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." Superiority seekers tie their well-being to the opinions of others. That's why they constantly seek validation, applause, or control. True confidence, the Stoic kind, ties well-being to inner stability, not outward dominance. We see this everywhere in modern life. On social media, people curate images of flawless success, showing only their highlights, exaggerating their confidence. But deep down, many are wrestling with feelings of inadequacy. The louder the performance, the more it reveals about what's missing. Plato hinted at this when he said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." If someone uses power to lift others up, their strength is real. If they use it to belittle and dominate, it's not strength, it's weakness disguised as superiority. Here's another scenario. Think about someone who always has to win every argument. Even over the smallest detail, they can't bear to be corrected. On the outside, they might look intelligent or dominant, but look deeper. What kind of person fears being wrong so much that they need to dominate every conversation? It's not someone at peace with themselves. It's someone afraid that being wrong makes them unworthy. Their superiority in debate is masking their fear of inadequacy. Now, here's the interesting part. People who mask inferiority with superiority don't always know they're doing it. Often it's unconscious. But as Stoicism teaches us, defenses built on illusion are fragile. Sooner or later the cracks show. The person who constantly brags eventually reveals their deep need for validation. The person who belittles others exposes their own hidden shame. The person who dominates every space eventually exhausts those around them, showing that their control is fueled by fear, not strength. The superiority mask is pretending without being. It's presenting an image of power without the foundation of peace. The Stoic challenge is to strip away pretense and live honestly, to be quietly strong rather than loudly superior. Let's pause here and turn the question inward. Because it's easy to notice superiority masks in others, but harder to notice in ourselves. Ask yourself, when do I feel the need to prove myself? When do I exaggerate my accomplishments? When do I belittle others to feel taller? These are signals of hidden insecurities, and the Stoic path is about facing those insecurities directly, not covering them up with noise. In relationships, this truth is especially visible. A partner who constantly reminds you of how lucky you are to have them, who dominates conversations and minimizes your voice, is rarely as confident as they appear. Their superiority is a shield, often protecting wounds from childhood, perhaps times they felt invisible, unworthy, or unloved. The louder their superiority, the more fragile those wounds likely are. If you can recognize this, you stop being fooled. You realize their arrogance isn't about you, it's about them. Here's the practical takeaway. When you encounter someone projecting superiority, don't be intimidated. Look for the insecurity beneath. Ask yourself, what are they afraid of losing? What are they afraid of being? Their superiority will often point you directly to their deepest fear. Once you see that, their arrogance loses power over you. And in your own life, remember this: the need to prove yourself is often a signal to pause and look inward. What fear is driving me to perform superiority? What part of myself am I trying to hide? The Stoics would say that facing this honestly is the path to strength, because when you accept your vulnerabilities, you no longer need to cover them up with noise. So, the next time someone brags endlessly, belittles others, or dominates every space, don't be deceived. Remember, superiority often masks inferiority. Real confidence is quiet. Real power doesn't perform, and the strongest person in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one who doesn't need to prove a thing. Truth 7. Fear drives most behavior. If you really want to understand why people do what they do, don't start by asking what they desire. Start by asking what they fear. Most human behavior, from the smallest habits to the biggest life choices, is guided less by the pursuit of joy and more by the avoidance of pain. It's uncomfortable to admit, but think about it. How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no, just to avoid disappointing someone? How often have you stayed quiet when you wanted to speak because you were afraid of looking foolish? These aren't choices born of desire, they're born of fear. Think about the different ways fear shows up. The person who talks too much might not be arrogant at all. They might be terrified of being ignored, so they fill the silence before rejection can creep in. The person who disappears when things get tough isn't always careless. Often they're afraid of failing, so they choose to vanish rather than face their fear directly. The one who constantly agrees, who says yes when they're screaming no inside, isn't spineless. They're afraid of losing connection. Fear of rejection drives their compliance. If you want to read people, you have to look beneath the surface and ask, what are they afraid of losing? Consider how fear shapes identity. The person who always needs to be in control may not actually crave control itself. They fear the chaos of losing it. The person who seeks constant approval doesn't really want compliments. They fear being invisible without them. The person who avoids conflict at all costs doesn't necessarily love peace. They fear rejection and abandonment if they rock the boat. Fear hides beneath layers of behavior, like a root beneath tangled branches. If you want to understand the branches, you have to look at the root. Now, here's where this becomes powerful in everyday life. When someone acts strangely, don't just ask what they're doing, ask what they're afraid of. The boss who micromanages every detail? They're afraid of failure. The friend who can't stop gossiping? They're afraid of their own irrelevance. The partner who clings too tightly? They're afraid of being abandoned. If you train yourself to see behavior through the lens of fear, people become much easier to read. What looks confusing or irrational suddenly makes sense when you trace it back to fear. Aristotle believed that courage was the highest virtue because it allows all the other virtues to exist. Without courage, honesty crumbles under fear of judgment. Without courage, kindness shrinks under fear of rejection. Without courage, wisdom gets buried under fear of making mistakes. That's why the Stoics placed so much importance on confronting fear, not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by meeting it with reason and strength. Think about how fear influences not just individuals, but whole groups. Socrates warned, "Beware the barrenness of a busy life." Many people fill their schedules endlessly, not because they love productivity, but because they fear stillness. In stillness, they might meet themselves, and that terrifies them. Others chase wealth, not out of true desire for riches, but out of fear of insignificance. Entire cultures are shaped by collective fears: fear of being weak, fear of losing status, fear of being forgotten. But here's the trap. Because fear is so universal, most people don't realize how much it shapes them. They believe they're acting from desire or choice, when in reality, fear is steering the wheel. Plato hinted at this when he said, "Courage is knowing what not to fear." Wisdom isn't about eliminating fear entirely. It's about learning which fears are illusions and which truths actually deserve our attention. So how do you use this in daily life? Start by watching the moments when someone overreacts. Overreaction is often fear spilling out. The person who gets irrationally angry at being interrupted may not be angry at all. They may be afraid of being dismissed. The person who panics at small changes isn't overdramatic. They're afraid of losing control. If you listen closely, you'll notice fear hiding behind countless ordinary behaviors. And if you look inward, you'll notice the same in yourself. Seneca reminded us, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." How often do we suffer before anything has actually happened, rehearsing our fears in advance? That suffering creates patterns. It shapes how we interact, what we avoid, and what we chase. And often the behaviors we least understand in others, or in ourselves, can be explained by this pre-suffering of imagined fears. The empowering shift comes when you stop asking, "What do they want?" and start asking, "What are they afraid to lose?" That single question can reveal more than hours of conversation, because at the core, people's greatest fears are universal: loss of love, loss of respect, loss of security, loss of meaning. These are the forces that push people into actions they can't even explain themselves. So the next time someone talks too much, disappears when things get hard, or agrees when they clearly don't mean it, look beneath the behavior. You'll likely find fear: fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of humiliation. And once you see it, you'll realize something profound. People aren't difficult to understand. They're just afraid to be seen. Truth 8. Judgment is projection. Have you ever noticed how quick people are to judge? A stranger makes a comment online, mocking someone's appearance. A co-worker criticizes another's work with a little too much energy. A friend rolls their eyes at someone for being too sensitive. On the surface, it looks like they're simply pointing out flaws in others. But if you've lived long enough and watched closely, you realize something deeper. Judgment says far more about the one judging than the one being judged. People project what they cannot accept within themselves. Think about how often this plays out in everyday life. The person who mocks sensitivity often struggles with their own emotions. They see someone cry easily and sneer, but the truth is, They fear their own vulnerability. They can't stand the mirror that sensitivity holds up to them, or consider the person who relentlessly criticizes other people's appearances. They might sound harsh, but what they're really showing you is how much they despise their own reflection. Judgment here is confession, just in disguise. Take another example: arrogance. When someone accuses others of being full of themselves over and over, it may not be arrogance they hate. It may be their own buried longing for recognition. They see in others what they crave, but are ashamed to admit. Here's where it gets interesting. Projection doesn't only apply to negative traits. Sometimes it shows up in what we admire. When we find ourselves idolizing someone's courage, wisdom, or confidence, that too can be a projection, reflecting qualities we long to develop in ourselves. Aristotle hinted at this when he said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." If you admire someone deeply, that admiration might be your unconscious, pointing to a part of yourself waiting to grow. But in the realm of judgment, projection is often painful. Think about how often people gossip. On the surface, gossip looks like entertainment, a harmless exchange of stories. But at its root, gossip is usually projection. People bring down others to quiet their own insecurities. They laugh at flaws that remind them of their own, as if mocking someone else's failures makes their own easier to carry. The Stoic challenge is to turn judgment back onto ourselves before we aim it at others. Epictetus advised that we focus on what is within our control. Someone else's character, that's beyond our control. Our reaction to it, that's ours. And if our reaction is harsh judgment, the wise move is to ask why. What within me is being touched? Why does this bother me so much? If you follow that line of questioning, you often uncover hidden fears or desires you've been avoiding. Let's take an everyday situation to see this in action. Imagine someone always ridicules lazy people. They can't stop talking about how irresponsible others are. At first, you might think they simply value hard work. But look deeper. Maybe they themselves are terrified of being seen as lazy. Maybe they grew up in a family where they never felt good enough unless they overworked. Their harsh judgment of others is really a defense against their own insecurity. But just as important is turning this truth inward. Ask yourself, what traits do I judge most harshly in others? Do I sneer at arrogance? Do I despise dishonesty? Do I get impatient with weakness? Each of those judgments might be a signal pointing back at me. Maybe I judge arrogance because I secretly crave recognition, but am ashamed to admit it. Maybe I hate dishonesty because I too struggle with facing certain truths. Maybe I despise weakness because I fear my own vulnerability. Judgment, if examined honestly, becomes a teacher. Imagine applying that humility to judgment. Instead of assuming you see others clearly, you admit, maybe what I see in them is actually a reflection of me. That shift changes judgment from condemnation into self-discovery. Carl Jung also warned, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Projection exists because most people can't do this. They can't accept their flaws, so they exile them, projecting them onto others. But when you begin the Stoic practice of radical self-examination, you strip away those projections. You start to accept your humanity, flaws and all. And once you accept yourself, judgment of others begins to fade. The practical step here is simple. When judgment rises in you, pause. Ask yourself, is this really about them or is it about me? When others judge you, don't immediately react. Ask, what are they revealing about themselves? This practice turns judgment into a window rather than a wound. You stop being pierced by it, and instead, you learn from it. Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily to meet others' flaws with patience. He wrote, "When you wake in the morning, Remember, you will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Notice his posture, not anger, not surprise, but calm recognition. He understood that these flaws are human and often projections of pain. That wisdom can guide us too. So the next time someone mocks sensitivity, criticizes appearances, or attacks someone else's character, look deeper. Judgment is rarely about the person being judged. It's a mirror held up to the one holding it. Once you learn to read judgment this way, you'll see through the noise. And perhaps more importantly, you'll see yourself more clearly too. Truth 9. Fake confidence hides guilt. We live in a culture that glorifies confidence. Everywhere you look, people are told to act certain, look strong, never let them see you sweat. And because of this, you'll meet countless individuals who project an image of being unshakable, the ones who walk with their head high, their voice firm, and their posture unbending. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Many times what looks like unbreakable confidence is actually a mask. Beneath that mask lives guilt, regret, and fear. The more someone performs strength, the more you should ask yourself, what are they trying so hard to cover? The Stoics warned about this kind of performance. Seneca advised, "You can tell the character of every man when you see how he gives and receives praise." Watch closely and you'll notice people who wear fake confidence often can't handle criticism. They grow defensive, angry, or dismissive at the slightest pushback. Why? Because their confidence isn't real. It's fragile, built on top of unresolved guilt or regret. A single crack threatens to expose everything they've been trying to hide. Think about someone who constantly insists on their own competence. They talk endlessly about how capable they are, how they always know what to do. Yet the moment a mistake is pointed out, they lash out. That's not strength, that's guilt. Guilt over past failures they've never made peace with. Their exaggerated confidence is just a shield protecting that wound. You've probably seen this in leaders. A boss who never admits when they're wrong. A politician who doubles down even when caught in a lie. A teacher who pretends to know everything even when they don't. Outwardly, they look certain. Inwardly, they're haunted by the guilt of not being enough, of not living up to their own image. Instead of facing that guilt honestly, they cover it with a mask of unshakable certainty. But if you look closely, you can always see the cracks, the defensiveness, the aggression, the inability to sit with humility. Let's bring this closer to daily life. Maybe you know someone who's always the loudest in the room, quick to interrupt, always ready with an answer. On the surface, they appear self-assured. But notice how they respond if they're challenged. Do they listen calmly, or do they snap back defensively? If it's the latter, you're seeing guilt at work. They're not really confident in their knowledge. They're afraid of being revealed as less than what they claim. Their guilt for not being as certain as they pretend becomes the fuel for their aggression. Paradoxically, this is the deepest form of confidence, the ability to admit ignorance without fear, to carry humility without shame. That kind of honesty doesn't need to perform, but fake confidence can never admit ignorance. To do so would expose the guilt it's trying to bury. Why does guilt fuel false confidence? Because guilt is heavy. People carry guilt for things they've done, words they've spoken, or opportunities they've missed. And instead of processing that guilt, instead of facing it honestly, they build a persona to cover it. It's easier to pretend to be unshakable than to admit, "I regret what I've done." But the Stoics would argue that this path only deepens the wound. Plato also hinted at this tension between inner reality and outer appearance. He said, "The greatest wealth is to live content with little." Apply this to confidence. The greatest strength is to live content with your limitations, to be at peace with imperfection, but the one who pretends to have it all figured out is never content. Their guilt whispers constantly, and they drown it out by projecting certainty. Here's a personal reflection worth considering. When have you faked confidence to cover something you regretted? Maybe you walked into a meeting pretending to be fully prepared when you knew you weren't. Maybe you projected strength after making a mistake because you didn't want anyone to see your guilt. We've all done it. But the Stoic way is to confront that honestly. Marcus Aurelius urged himself daily to align with truth. He wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That applies to confidence too. If it isn't real, don't perform it. Instead, face the weakness beneath and grow stronger by admitting it. Carl Jung also warned about the dangers of burying guilt. He wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And yet, this is the only way to dissolve fake confidence. When you accept your flaws, your mistakes, your regrets, you no longer need to mask them with a performance. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to posture. It doesn't collapse under criticism. It accepts weakness because it knows weakness is part of being human." So how do you spot fake confidence in others? Look for overcompensation. The person who always needs to be the smartest, the strongest, the most certain, the one who cannot admit mistakes, the one who grows defensive when questioned. These are signs of guilt and insecurity, not true strength. And how do you avoid falling into this trap yourself? Practice the Stoic art of humility. Admit mistakes quickly. Accept ignorance without shame. Let go of the need to appear flawless. The paradox is that the less you need to perform confidence, the more confident you actually are. Aristotle believed that virtue lies in balance. Not too much, not too little, but the right measure. Applied here, confidence in balance is steady, humble, and real. Too little confidence is weakness. Too much, especially when it's loud and defensive, is usually guilt in disguise. The balance is found when you live in truth, honest about your strengths, honest about your flaws. In relationships, this truth is transformative. The partner who never apologizes, who insists on always being right, isn't truly secure. They're hiding guilt under the mask of superiority. The friend who dominates every conversation isn't brimming with certainty. They're terrified of being unseen. Once you understand this, you stop being fooled by the performance. You see the guilt beneath the mask, and you respond not with intimidation, but with clarity and compassion. So remember this: when someone looks unshakable, look closer. If their confidence is defensive, brittle, or aggressive, it's probably built on guilt. Real confidence doesn't need to shout. It doesn't fear mistakes. It doesn't collapse under criticism. It simply exists, steady and quiet, like a mountain. And the strongest people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who look perfect. They're the ones who no longer need to pretend. Truth 10. Exaggeration reveals insecurity. We've all heard those sweeping declarations people love to make. I never care what people think. I'm always happy. Nothing ever bothers me. At first, those words might sound strong, even admirable, but if you listen closely, you start to notice a pattern. The more absolute the claim, the less likely it's true. Real strength doesn't need to exaggerate. Real happiness doesn't need to be shouted. Exaggeration, more often than not, reveals insecurity. It's the ego turning up the volume, trying to drown out the quieter truth that lives underneath. Think about how this shows up in everyday life. The friend who constantly declares they're so over someone usually isn't over them at all. The co-worker who repeats, "I never get stressed," is often the one who secretly loses sleep every night. The person who insists they always tell the truth is often hiding something. When you hear absolutes, pay attention. They're often compensations, confessions disguised as declarations. Seneca saw through the trap of exaggeration centuries ago. He wrote, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." Exaggeration deceives us in the same way. It paints life in extremes, when in reality, life is full of nuance. To say, "I'm always happy," is to deny half of what it means to be human. To say, "I never struggle," is to hide from the truth that everyone struggles. By exaggerating, people reveal their discomfort with life's balance, their refusal to admit imperfection. Let's take a closer look at why people exaggerate. At its core, exaggeration is a plea. It's someone saying, "Please believe this about me because I don't fully believe it myself." If they were truly confident, truly happy, truly at peace, they wouldn't need to make such bold declarations. Real confidence is quiet. Real joy doesn't need constant advertisement. It simply exists. But here's the deeper insight. Exaggeration isn't just about deceiving others. It's often about deceiving ourselves. We repeat absolutes because we're trying to convince ourselves of them. "I never care what people think" becomes a mantra, not because it's true, but because the speaker desperately wishes it were. In that sense, exaggeration is self-deception spoken aloud. Consider relationships. Imagine someone constantly saying, "I don't need anyone. I'm perfectly fine on my own." Sometimes that's true, but often, the louder the claim, the more it hides the opposite. A longing for connection, a fear of vulnerability. Or think about someone who declares, "I'm always honest." If you watch closely, you'll often find they're bending the truth somewhere. The exaggeration is a shield, not a mirror. Exaggeration is a misuse of power, the power of words. Instead of using words to reveal truth, exaggeration twists them to hide truth. But the irony is that in hiding, it also reveals. The louder the exaggeration, the more fragile the truth underneath becomes visible to anyone paying attention. Now, what does Stoicism teach us about dealing with this? First, don't take exaggerated claims at face value. Read the insecurity beneath. If someone says, "I'm always happy," hear the whisper, "I'm afraid of admitting when I'm sad." If someone says, "I never need help," hear the quiet truth, "I don't know how to ask for help." By learning to hear what exaggeration hides, you see people more clearly. Second, examine your own exaggerations. When do you use absolutes? Do you tell people, "I don't care," when you actually do? Do you insist, "I'm fine," when you're struggling? These exaggerations are windows into your own insecurities. Let's think about how this applies to leadership. A leader who constantly insists, "I always know what to do," is not leading from wisdom. They're leading from insecurity. The truly wise leader can say, "I don't know," without shame. Marcus Aurelius ruled the largest empire in the world, yet he wrote daily reminders to himself of his flaws, his fears, his need for humility. That's true confidence, grounded, quiet, real, the opposite of exaggeration. Carl Jung pointed out another important truth. Where your fear is, there is your task. Exaggeration often points directly to fear. If someone exaggerates their independence, they fear dependence. If they exaggerate their happiness, they fear sadness. If they exaggerate their honesty, they fear being seen as dishonest. The exaggerated statement reveals the very place where fear lives. And if you listen with discernment, you can learn more from exaggeration than from any carefully crafted speech. Here's a practice worth trying. Next time you hear someone use an absolute, "I never," or "I always," pause. Ask yourself, What are they really saying? What insecurity lives underneath this claim? And in your own speech, catch your absolutes. Instead of saying, "I never care what people think," try admitting, "Sometimes I care too much." That admission may feel vulnerable, but it's also liberating. Because when you stop exaggerating, you stop hiding. So the next time someone declares with certainty, "I never care what people think," don't take it literally. Hear the fear beneath it. Recognize that exaggeration is the ego's way of turning up the volume to cover its insecurity. And in your own life, choose the quieter path. Choose honesty over absolutes. Because the strongest truth doesn't shout. It whispers steadily without needing exaggeration at all. Truth 11. Control means chaos inside. Have you ever noticed how some people can't relax unless they're in charge of everything? They need to manage every detail, correct every small mistake, and dominate every decision. On the outside, it can look like strength, like discipline, or like competence. But if you look deeper, you'll often see the opposite. That hunger for control isn't about stability. It's a sign of inner chaos. The tighter someone grips the world around them, the more likely it is because something inside of them feels like it's slipping away. Carl Jung gave us a clue when he said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases." People who try to control everything are often terrified of uncertainty. They want life to fit into a shoe, neat, predictable, safe. But life doesn't work that way. Life resists control, and when someone cannot accept that truth, they turn their fear inward and outward, clamping down on everything and everyone around them. What looks like power is usually desperation. Think about the workplace. A boss who refuses to delegate, who insists on approving every small decision, might look competent. But what they're really showing is fear. Fear that if they loosen their grip, everything will collapse. Or in relationships, a partner who tries to dictate how the other should talk, dress, or even think, isn't demonstrating love. They're broadcasting insecurity. The need for control is the outward symptom of inner disorder. Let's make this practical. Think about the micromanager at work. Every email must be copied to them. Every plan must be reviewed 3 times. Their energy drains the team, not because they're strong, but because they can't handle the anxiety of letting go. Or the friend who can't enjoy a trip unless everything goes exactly as scheduled. The restaurant, the timing, even the order of activities. One deviation and their mood collapses. On the surface, they look organized. Beneath it, they're wrestling with inner chaos they can't quiet. Plato said, "The first and best victory is to conquer self." The controlling person hasn't yet achieved this victory. Instead of conquering their fears, they try to conquer their environment. But no amount of external control will silence internal chaos. The more they chase it, the more obvious their fragility becomes. The Stoic way is different. It's not about pretending chaos doesn't exist. It's about accepting it with courage. Epictetus taught his students to say, "Let me see what happens," rather than, "Let me make everything happen." That shift transforms the inner life. Instead of clenching, you begin to trust. Instead of forcing, you begin to adapt. And from that space, true strength emerges. Not the brittle strength of control, but the steady strength of peace. Now think about your own life. When do you try to control too much? Maybe you rehearse conversations endlessly in your head, afraid of saying the wrong thing. Maybe you plan everything down to the minute because uncertainty terrifies you. Maybe you correct others constantly, not because you need perfection, but because imperfection makes you anxious. These aren't signs of strength. They're signs of places where fear is still running the show. Aristotle reminded us that virtue lies in balance. Courage is the balance between fear and recklessness. In the same way, healthy order is the balance between chaos and rigidity. The person who cannot tolerate uncertainty has tipped out of balance. Their desire for control exposes their fear of life itself. And life, the Stoics would say, can never be fully controlled, only embraced. Consider relationships again. When a partner feels the need to dictate everything, it often pushes the other away. They may think control will create security, but it actually destroys it. Love, like life, requires trust. And trust cannot exist in the shadow of control. Socrates hinted at this when he said, "He who is not contented with what he has would not be contented with what he would like to have." The controlling person is never content. No matter how much they control, it's never enough, because the real battle isn't outside, it's inside. Seneca offered a freeing perspective. He who is brave is free. Freedom doesn't come from holding on tighter. It comes from releasing the grip, from being brave enough to let life unfold. The controlling person thinks they're strong, but in reality, they're enslaved to their own fear. True strength lies in loosening the grip, in meeting uncertainty with calm rather than panic. And what about you? Can you let go when things don't go according to plan? Can you sit with uncertainty without trying to bend it to your will? The Stoics would encourage you to practice letting go daily. Start small. Leave something unplanned and see how you respond. Notice the tension inside when you're not in control. That tension is where the real work begins. So, the next time you meet a micromanager, a controlling partner, or even catch yourself obsessing over every detail, remember this. Control often means chaos inside. The stronger the grip, the more fragile the heart beneath it. And the path to peace isn't in controlling more. It's in letting go and trusting that you can handle life even when it doesn't go according to plan. Truth 12. Performance signals emptiness. You don't have to look far to see how much of life has turned into a performance. Open any social media app and you'll find carefully curated images, rehearsed captions, and exaggerated displays of happiness, success, and confidence. But this isn't limited to online. You see it at work, when someone dominates meetings more to be noticed than to contribute. You see it in relationships, when someone plays the role of perfect partner to cover insecurities they don't want revealed. The louder the performance, the more it often hides emptiness inside. Real peace doesn't need a spotlight. It's quiet, steady, and whole, whether anyone is watching or not. The Stoics would have recognized this instantly. They believed that external validation is one of the most dangerous traps of human life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." That line could be written about today's world. Performances are built on this very contradiction, caring more about how others see us than how we truly live. The louder someone performs, the more fragile their inner world often is. Think about someone who constantly brags about how happy they are. Every story, every post, every conversation becomes another declaration of joy. On the surface, it sounds positive. But if happiness is real, it doesn't need constant proof. The louder someone insists on their joy, the more likely they're wrestling with sadness when the curtain falls. We see this not only in individuals, but in entire cultures. The rise of look-at-me energy, constant self-promotion, endless updates, curated perfection, is less a reflection of strength than of insecurity. People are terrified of being invisible, so they perform to avoid silence. Epictetus offered a different path. He told his students, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." Notice the order: be before you appear. True character begins with being, not performing. But performance reverses this order. It focuses entirely on appearing before others while neglecting the substance underneath. When someone lives this way, they may fool others for a time, but they can't fool themselves forever. The performance eventually cracks. Let's bring this closer to real life. Imagine someone in your circle who always has to post about their achievements. Every success, no matter how small, becomes a public announcement. At first, it looks like pride, but look closer and you'll notice the need behind it. They're hungry for acknowledgement. Their sense of worth depends on applause. Without it, they feel empty. Or consider the person who always plays the role of the entertainer. They make everyone laugh, keep the mood light, always on stage. Yet when they're alone, the silence feels unbearable. The performance fills the void, but the void remains. Plato, in his Reflections on Human Nature, said, "The price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men." In the same spirit, the price we pay for indifference to our inner life is to be ruled by performance. When we don't tend to our own soul, performance takes over, dictating how we act, what we show, and even how we define ourselves. And the cost of that is authenticity. This isn't just a problem for them, it's for all of us. Ask yourself honestly, when do I perform? Do I post to show my true life, or do I post to make it look better than it feels? Do I smile because I feel joy, or because I fear people will ask questions if I don't? Do I exaggerate my strengths to others because I'm proud, or because I'm insecure? These questions are difficult, but the Stoic way is to live with clarity, not illusion. Marcus Aurelius lived at the center of the world's attention. As emperor, his life was one constant performance in the eyes of others, yet his private writings remind us how he resisted that pull. He wrote, "Be content with what you are, and wish not for the things which belong to others." This is the posture of true peace, contentment with being, without the need to perform for others. Imagine how different our lives would feel if we lived this way. Less energy wasted on appearances, more invested in substance. Socrates gave us a model of humility that cuts through performance. He said, "The way to gain a good reputation is to endeavor to be what you desire to appear." Performers invert this. They strive to appear without doing the harder work of becoming. But reputations built on performance are fragile. They collapse the moment reality doesn't match the show. Only when we live as we desire to appear, quietly, consistently, does strength become unshakable. Aristotle too spoke of balance. He warned against extremes and praised moderation as the path to virtue. Performance is always an extreme, an overcompensation, a stretching of reality into spectacle. The person who constantly needs to be seen has tipped out of balance, living for appearances instead of substance. The Stoic way would be to return to equilibrium, where actions matter more than applause. So what can we do with this truth? First, learn to read performance for what it is. Don't be fooled by the volume. The louder someone needs to show their happiness, their love, or their strength, the more fragile it likely is. Read the insecurity behind the show. Second, watch yourself. Notice when you feel the urge to exaggerate, to display, to perform. Ask yourself, am I doing this to share or to cover, to express or to impress? These questions can save you from wasting your life on stages that don't matter. So remember this, when someone is always performing, always demanding to be seen, it's usually because they don't feel whole when no one's watching. True peace doesn't need an audience. True strength doesn't need applause. And the deepest kind of life isn't lived as a show, it's lived quietly, steadily, in alignment with who you really are. Truth 13. Pain shapes belief. When someone tells you what they believe, it's tempting to take it at face value. I don't believe in love. People can't be trusted. Life is meaningless. These statements sound logical, like carefully reasoned conclusions. But if you look deeper, you'll find that most beliefs aren't born from logic. They're born from wounds. Behind almost every hard opinion, there's a scar. People don't just speak from ideas. They speak from experiences that cut them, shaped them, and left a mark they couldn't forget. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that the mind interprets reality not from pure reason, but from how it has been shaped by suffering. Epictetus taught, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." Notice that. It's not the event itself, but the way the wound is processed that forms belief. One person loses a job and believes, "I am worthless." Another loses the same job and believes, "I am free to start again." The pain is similar. The beliefs it produces are worlds apart. Think about someone you know who is overly cynical. Maybe they insist that everyone is selfish, that kindness is always fake. At first it seems like a worldview, but if you ask, "Where did this come from?" you'll often find a story. Maybe they were betrayed by someone they trusted. Maybe they gave kindness and received cruelty in return. Their belief isn't a detached judgment. It's a scar tissue built around old wounds. Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." But not everyone allows pain to strengthen them. Some allow pain to harden them, shaping beliefs that protect but also limit them. Let's bring this down to earth with an example. Imagine someone who was abandoned in love. They might adopt the belief, "People always leave." That belief becomes a lens. Now, every new relationship is filtered through suspicion, every moment of closeness tinged with fear of loss. The wound shaped the belief, and the belief reshaped their future experiences. Unless they learn to question it, they remain trapped in a cycle where pain keeps repeating itself. Carl Jung added another layer to this truth. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Not all pain leads to destructive beliefs. For some, pain becomes the foundation of wisdom. The person who was betrayed may learn to value honesty fiercely, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. The one who experienced loss may develop gratitude for life's fragile moments. The key difference lies in whether the person confronts the wound or hides from it. Unexamined pain hardens into limiting beliefs. Examined pain can open into wisdom. The Stoics leaned heavily on this practice of examination. Epictetus encouraged reflection each night, reviewing the day, asking where he reacted poorly and where he could improve. This wasn't just moral discipline, it was psychological hygiene. By reflecting, he prevented pain from quietly hardening into false beliefs. Without reflection, anger becomes, "People are always against me." Fear becomes, "The world is unsafe." But with reflection, pain is seen clearly and transformed into growth. Plato suggested that philosophy itself begins with wonder. But in practice, many people's philosophy begins with wounds. Their conclusions about life come not from open wonder, but from closed scars. This explains why some people carry such rigid, bitter beliefs. They aren't reasoned positions, they're defenses. The sharper the belief, the deeper the wound behind it. Consider how this plays out in family life. A parent who grew up in poverty might believe money is everything because their childhood pain taught them what it felt like to have nothing. A child who grew up ignored might believe attention must be earned, shaping how they relate to others for decades. These aren't abstract ideas. They're scars turned into guiding principles. And unless someone questions where those beliefs come from, they'll assume their truth rather than trauma. An unexamined wound will always become a belief, and that belief will quietly govern behavior. If someone never examines why they think love is pointless, or why they think no one can be trusted, they'll keep living inside that belief as if it were reality. Examining life means tracing beliefs back to their origin and asking, is this truth or is this pain speaking? Seneca, reflecting on suffering, said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. Beliefs shaped by pain are an opportunity to prove ourselves, to test whether we can transform wounds into wisdom instead of letting them define us. Pain will shape you, but you have a say in how. So how do we apply this? First, when you hear someone express a harsh belief, resist the urge to argue with logic. Instead, listen for the wound. If someone says, all relationships are toxic, don't bombard them with counterexamples. Ask yourself, what heartbreak might live behind that statement? When you understand the wound, you understand the belief. And second, turn the same practice inward. Ask, what beliefs do I carry that might have been shaped by old pain? Do I distrust easily because I was betrayed? Do I avoid risk because I once failed? Do I protect myself with cynicism because hope once hurt me? Marcus Aurelius modeled this inner questioning in his journals. Again and again, he challenged his own judgments, testing them against reason and reminding himself not to let pain dictate his worldview. He refused to let wounds define his philosophy, and that's the Stoic path. To see clearly, to accept pain without turning it into a permanent distortion. Carl Jung warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Beliefs born from pain live in the unconscious. They become automatic, invisible, guiding choices without us realizing. But once you bring them into consciousness, once you ask, what hurt me into believing this, you take back your freedom. So the next time you hear someone declare, love isn't real or people can't be trusted, don't take it as raw philosophy. Hear the story behind it. Every hard opinion carries a scar. And if you want to truly read people and truly understand yourself, you have to look not just at the belief, but at the wound that shaped it. Truth 14. How they treat the weak shows who they are. It's easy to act polite when the spotlight is on you. Most people can smile at their boss, show respect to someone powerful, or treat an authority figure with courtesy. But if you want to know who someone really is, don't look at how they treat those above them. Watch how they treat those who can't give them anything in return. The waiter, the cashier, the stranger asking for directions, the colleague with no influence. That's where character is revealed. Not in how we treat the strong, but in how we treat the weak. Think about everyday life. Someone may be charming to their manager, always respectful, always agreeable. But the moment a server gets an order wrong, they snap with anger. That one moment tells you more about their character than months of polite behavior at work. The same goes for relationships. A person might treat their partner well in public, but dismiss their concerns in private. True character isn't about performance. It's about consistency, especially when compassion is optional. Let's pause here and consider why some people mistreat the weak. Often, it's projection. They carry their own feelings of powerlessness, so they seize any opportunity to feel superior. Mocking, belittling, or dismissing those below them becomes a way of patching their own insecurity. Jung described this dynamic as shadow projection, attacking in others what we can't face in ourselves. When someone demeans the powerless, it's rarely about the person they're attacking. It's about their own inner emptiness. Aristotle emphasized the role of virtue in action. He wrote, "The greatest virtues are those which are most useful to others." By that measure, compassion toward the vulnerable is one of the highest virtues. It provides no advantage to the self, no gain in status, only a benefit to the other. That's why it's such a pure reflection of character. Helping an equal can be transactional. Helping the weak is simply human. Consider history. The leaders who are remembered most fondly are not the ones who used power to dominate, but the ones who tempered it with mercy. The generals who spared civilians, the rulers who cared for the poor, the philosophers who took time to teach even the lowest classes. Their strength wasn't diluted by compassion, it was magnified by it. The Stoics would say that compassion doesn't weaken power, it reveals whether power is real in the first place. If someone lashes out at the powerless, it's because they haven't conquered themselves. Their anger, their pride, their insecurity still rules them. But the one who can show patience to a child, respect to a servant, or kindness to a stranger has achieved self-mastery. They are not slaves to ego. They are free. Now think about relationships in your own life. Maybe you've known someone who seemed admirable, ambitious, respected, even charismatic, until you saw how they treated people they didn't need. The friend who ignores messages from people they can't benefit from. The partner who's sweet to you but dismissive towards strangers. The colleague who's helpful to superiors but cold to interns. Those moments are X-rays. They reveal the truth beneath the surface. Socrates taught by asking questions. He might ask here, if someone only treats the powerful with respect, is that respect real, or is it fear disguised as virtue? True respect is universal. It doesn't discriminate by status. And when you see someone who embodies this, who treats a janitor with the same dignity as a CEO, you're seeing integrity in its purest form. Seneca also urged consistency in character. He said, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable. A person who treats the weak with cruelty is conquered by ego. A person who treats them with patience and kindness is unconquerable because they refuse to let pride dictate their actions." This is why compassion is such a test of strength. It shows whether you belong to yourself or whether you're ruled by insecurity. Let's make this practical. Next time you want to know someone's character, don't listen to how they speak about values. Watch how they act when there's nothing in it for them. Notice how they treat the service worker, the child, the stranger. And in your own life, ask yourself, how do I act when compassion is optional? Do I offer kindness only when it benefits me, or do I see every person as worthy of dignity? So the next time you want to measure someone's strength, don't look at their titles, their confidence, or their achievements. Look at how they treat those with no power over them. That's the truest reflection of who they are. And remember, real strength isn't crushing the weak. Real strength is protecting them. Because compassion isn't a soft option, it's the highest form of mastery. Truth 15. Fear of being forgotten. Fuels attention-seeking. There's a certain kind of person we've all seen, the one who can't stop posting online, who floods every conversation with stories about themselves, who always has to be the center of the room. At first glance, it looks like confidence. They appear bold, charismatic, larger than life. But if you look closer, if you really pay attention, you often find something else beneath the surface. The show isn't built on strength. It's built on fear. Fear of being forgotten, of fading into the background, of being invisible. The louder the performance, the deeper the wound of neglect. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people about one, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself." People who constantly seek attention are often wrestling with this loneliness. They're not loud because they're full. They're loud because they feel unseen. The attention becomes a substitute for real connection, a way to patch the inner fear that if no one is watching, they don't matter at all. Think about it in daily life. The co-worker who interrupts constantly, needing every idea to pass through them, isn't overflowing with confidence. They're terrified that if they don't stand out, they'll disappear. The friend who can't stop posting their perfect life isn't secure in their joy. They're afraid that if they don't perform it, no one will believe they have it. And the person who dominates every room doesn't always love attention. They fear silence, because in silence, their insecurity echoes back. Epictetus also warned against attaching our value to things outside of us. He wrote, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That's the opposite of attention-seeking. True strength is the ability to live without needing constant validation. But for someone afraid of being forgotten, the idea of being unseen feels unbearable, so they chase visibility, mistaking it for worth. Let's take this deeper. Where does this fear come from? Often, it begins in childhood. A child who grows up unseen, ignored, overshadowed, or dismissed, learns to perform to earn attention. Maybe they became the funny one, the loud one, or the high achiever. Their identity was shaped around being noticed, because in their mind, being unseen meant being unloved. As adults, that script doesn't disappear. It just gets louder. The adult still performs, still posts, still interrupts, because the inner child is still afraid of fading into the background. Aristotle reflected on the nature of human beings when he said, "Man is by nature a social animal. We crave recognition because we're wired for connection, but when the craving turns into desperation, it reveals fear, not nature. Healthy connection is mutual, quiet, and steady. Desperate attention-seeking is loud, exaggerated, and fragile. One builds real bonds, the other creates endless hunger." Socrates asked questions that cut through illusions. He might ask here, if your worth depends on being remembered, what happens when memory fades? Are you worthless then? Of course not. Worth doesn't come from applause. It comes from living truthfully, acting with integrity, being who you are even when no one is watching. The attention seeker forgets this, and so they perform louder and louder, trying to hold back the tide of forgetfulness, but the tide always comes. Let's pause and turn this inward. Ask yourself, when do I perform to avoid invisibility? Do I post not to share but to be seen? Do I exaggerate in conversations, not to connect, but to dominate? Do I fear silence because silence makes me feel small? These are uncomfortable questions, but they point to the heart of the matter. Carl Jung also noted, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." If the vision of yourself depends on the eyes of others, you'll always live in blur. But if you look inward, face the wound of neglect, and accept your own worth without external confirmation, then you no longer fear being forgotten. You live fully, even in silence. The need to be remembered is often the need to soothe old pain, but the Stoic way urges examination, honesty, and acceptance. The only way to quiet the fear of being forgotten is to stop tying your value to memory and instead anchor it to virtue. So the next time you see someone desperately seeking attention, posting endlessly, dominating rooms, or exaggerating every story, don't be fooled by the show. See the fear underneath. Understand that the louder they perform, the emptier they often feel inside. And in your own life, remember, you don't need to be remembered to matter. You just need to live aligned with truth while you're here. Because at the end of it all, even the names carved into stone will one day erode. But the life you lived, the kindness you gave, the courage you showed, the peace you cultivated, those things shape eternity in ways no applause ever could. Truth 16. Envy disguises itself as attack. It's easy to mistake envy for hate. Someone mocks you, criticizes your choices, or dismisses your success, and at first it feels like hostility. But if you pause and look closer, you'll often find something surprising hiding beneath their words. What looks like hate is often envy in disguise. People don't always attack because they despise what they see. More often, they attack because they secretly crave it, but believe they can't have it. Their insults are just the echo of a frustrated desire. The Stoics understood envy as one of the most corrosive emotions. Epictetus warned, "When you see someone honored above you or more prosperous, reflect what power they have received in exchange for that." Instead of allowing envy to fester into attack, the Stoic approach is to recognize the cost behind appearances. The envious person, however, doesn't do this. They don't examine, they don't reflect. They lash out, hoping to reduce others to the level where their own disappointment feels less sharp. Think about how this plays out in real life. A friend hears about your new opportunity and makes a joking comment that undercuts your achievement. A colleague criticizes your work ethic right after you receive praise. A stranger online mocks your appearance or lifestyle, not because they know you, but because something about you triggers what they wish they had. These moments sting, but if you look at them through the lens of envy, you realize something important. Their attack says more about what they lack than about who you are. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." Envy is poverty of the soul. It convinces people that the joy, success, or strength they see in others only highlights their own emptiness. So instead of facing their craving honestly, they turn it into attack. They try to bring others down, hoping it will relieve their sense of lack. But envy never relieves. It only deepens the wound. Envious attacks fall into the second category. They don't come to nourish or uplift. They come to drain. But when you recognize envy behind the attack, you stop taking it personally. You see it for what it is, a projection of longing turned sour. Let's take an example from daily life. Someone sees you pursuing your passion with courage, and instead of encouraging you, they scoff, "Must be nice to waste time on hobbies." At first it feels like dismissal, but if you look deeper, maybe they once had a passion too, something they abandoned out of fear or duty. Seeing you chase yours reawakens that buried desire, but instead of facing their own regret, they attack. Their envy becomes your insult. But the insult isn't really about you, it's about their pain. Carl Jung also reminded us, envy is the unconscious admiration. That's the paradox. Envy is not the opposite of admiration, it's twisted admiration. When someone envies you, they're confessing that you hold something they value, even if they can't admit it openly. Their words may sound cruel, but the root is often longing. They see something in you that mirrors what they wish for themselves. The Stoics would encourage us to respond to this, not with bitterness, but with calm. Epictetus said, "Remember that it is not he who reviles or strikes you who insults you, but your opinion that these things are insulting." Once you see envy as disguised desire, the sting fades. Their attack loses its grip on you. You no longer hear it as truth. You hear it as a confession of what they're missing. But this truth doesn't just apply to others. It applies to us too. Ask yourself, when do I envy? When do I criticize someone harshly? Not because they deserve it, but because they trigger something in me. Maybe you mock someone's confidence because you wish you felt that free. Maybe you criticize someone's wealth because you secretly want security. Maybe you roll your eyes at someone's joy because you've forgotten what it feels like. Envy, if examined honestly, is a teacher. It shows us where we long to grow, but haven't yet given ourselves permission. Socrates might ask, "Why do you seek to harm in another what you've failed to cultivate in yourself?" It's a piercing question. The Stoic answer would be, Don't attack what you admire in disguise. Recognize it and let it guide you toward your own growth. Envy can either rot you from the inside or point you to your potential. The choice is yours. Now think about your own experiences. Remember the times someone attacked you unfairly. Maybe it was a harsh comment, a mocking laugh, or a backhanded compliment. At the time, it hurt. But looking back, can you see the envy beneath it? Can you recognize that their words were less about you and more about what they felt they couldn't have? That shift in perspective is liberating. Their attack stops defining you and starts revealing them. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to keep perspective. He wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them knows anything about the subject." Apply that to envy. The attack of someone ruled by envy has no real value. It doesn't reveal truth about you. It reveals their own ignorance of themselves. Once you realize this, you stop being pierced by their words. So the next time someone tears you down, pause. Don't rush to defend yourself. Don't waste energy hating them back. Instead, ask, what in me triggered their envy? What desire are they confessing through their attack? By seeing envy beneath the surface, you gain clarity and freedom. And when you notice envy in yourself, don't disguise it as attack. Let it show you where you need to grow. Because in the end, envy is just desire in disguise. And once you learn to recognize it, the world changes. Petty insults stop hurting, attacks lose their power, and what once felt like hatred reveals itself as a mirror of longing, a longing you can either heal or ignore. Truth 17. Childhood scripts repeat forever. If you really want to understand people, don't just look at who they are today. Look at who they were forced to be when they were children, because most adults aren't acting from brand new beliefs. They're reenacting old scripts, carrying wounds from years they barely remember. The child who was ignored often grows into the adult desperate for attention. The child punished for showing feelings becomes the adult who hides them at all costs. And the child who was taught they had to earn love grows into the adult who never stops performing for approval. The past doesn't vanish, it repeats silently in the present. Think about how this looks in everyday life. Imagine a friend who can't stand silence in a conversation. They keep talking, filling every gap, making sure no one loses interest. On the surface, it seems like personality. Maybe they're just chatty. But if you look deeper, you might find a child who was ignored, who learned that silence meant invisibility. Their adult behavior isn't about the present conversation. It's about replaying an old fear. If I stop talking, I'll disappear. Consider relationships. The partner who becomes clingy at the first sign of distance isn't just insecure. They might be reenacting the fear of abandonment they felt as a child. The person who shuts down in conflict, avoiding emotion at all costs, may not be cold-hearted. They might be replaying the lesson they learned long ago, that feelings bring punishment. And the overachiever, the one who can never rest because they always need to prove themselves, they're often driven by a childhood where love was conditional, given only when they excelled. Each adult pattern is a confession of a child's wound. Socrates once said, "Know thyself." This truth lives at the heart of it. If you want to know yourself, you must be brave enough to ask, who was I forced to be as a child? Was I forced to be the peacekeeper, the performer, the strong one who never cried? Those roles didn't disappear when childhood ended. They became ingrained scripts, and unless we confront them, we keep acting them out, even when they no longer serve us. Carl Jung added, nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent. This means childhood scripts don't just shape us, they ripple forward. The unresolved wounds of parents often become the burdens of their children. A parent who felt invisible may raise a child who becomes the stage for their own need to be seen. A parent who was punished for weakness may teach their child to hide emotions. The cycle repeats unless someone decides to break it. The Stoics would call breaking the cycle an act of courage. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." To master yourself, you must master the old scripts. You must see them clearly, admit where they came from, and choose differently. Otherwise, childhood keeps writing your adulthood. Think about your own life. Maybe you avoid conflict because, as a child, conflict always led to pain. Maybe you chase recognition endlessly because, as a child, you felt invisible without achievement. Maybe you withdraw emotionally because, as a child, vulnerability was unsafe. These patterns aren't random. They're rehearsals of roles written long before you had the power to question them. Marcus Aurelius also practiced this reclamation. In his meditations, he constantly reminded himself not to be ruled by what others expected, but to live by reason and virtue. He knew that society, like childhood, tries to script us. And he knew the only way to be free was to step back and examine those scripts, keeping what was true, discarding what was false. So how do you begin to break free? The first step is honesty. Ask yourself, what part of my life feels less like a choice and more like a compulsion? Do I overwork because I want to, or because I learned as a child that love had to be earned? Do I avoid intimacy because I value independence, or because I learned as a child that closeness brings pain? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are the doorway to freedom. Plato said, "The beginning is the most important part of the work." Childhood was our beginning, and it wrote powerful scripts. But beginnings don't have to dictate endings. With awareness, with reflection, and with the kind of courage the Stoics practiced daily, you can choose new scripts. You can live not from wounds, but from wisdom. So remember this, people rarely act from new beliefs. They act from old wounds. The child ignored becomes the adult desperate for attention. The child punished for emotion becomes the adult who hides feelings. The child who learned love was conditional becomes the adult who never stops performing. If you want to truly read someone, or yourself, ask, who were they forced to be as a child? The answer will tell you more than any surface behavior ever could. Truth 18. Patterns are silent confessions. If you really want to know someone, don't just listen to what they say. Watch what they do, over and over again. Words can be rehearsed, masks can be carefully maintained. But patterns don't lie. They slip out quietly, almost unnoticed, but they reveal the deepest truths about a person's inner world. Someone who disappears from every relationship isn't just unlucky. They're confessing a fear of intimacy. Someone who fills every hour with work isn't just ambitious. They're confessing a fear of stillness. Patterns are like confessions, spoken without words. If you learn to read them, you can see what even people don't admit to themselves. People may claim to be fine, confident, or at peace, but if their actions repeat the same story of avoidance, fear, or longing, those actions reveal more than their words ever could. Patterns are like footprints. They trace the path of the unconscious, and if you follow them, you'll end up at the core of someone's hidden wounds. Think about how this shows up in daily life. A friend who constantly cancels plans last minute isn't just busy. They may be confessing that closeness overwhelms them. A colleague who brags endlessly about working late nights may not be dedicated. They may be confessing that silence terrifies them, because silence forces them to confront themselves. A partner who repeatedly avoids emotional conversations isn't just bad at talking. They may be confessing that vulnerability still feels unsafe. The confession is in the pattern, not the excuse. Aristotle observed that we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Habits are simply patterns made permanent. If someone repeatedly lies, cheats, avoids, or withdraws, those patterns form their character. If someone consistently shows kindness, patience, or courage, those patterns define them too. One act may be random. Repeated acts are identity, and in those patterns, the soul speaks its truth. Let's consider relationships again. Have you ever heard someone say, "I don't know why I keep ending up with the wrong kind of person"? The answer is in their patterns. They may unconsciously seek partners who mirror old wounds, choosing neglectful people because neglect feels familiar. Or they may sabotage relationships in the same way each time, confessing through action that closeness still terrifies them. The words say, "I want love." The patterns say, "I'm afraid of it." Which one do you trust? Always the pattern. Patterns reveal whether someone has conquered themselves or not. The person who reacts with anger again and again hasn't conquered their temper. The one who withdraws every time conflict arises hasn't conquered their fear of confrontation. Patterns show where self-mastery exists and where it's absent. To read people is to watch for these victories and failures written in repetition. But let's not keep this truth only aimed at others. It applies to us as well. What are your patterns? Do you procrastinate when faced with fear? Do you avoid difficult conversations? Do you chase validation again and again? Each of these habits is a silent confession. The Stoics emphasize daily reflection as a way of catching these patterns. At the end of each day, they would review, where did I act well? Where did I fall short? Where did I repeat the same mistakes? So here's the practical takeaway. When reading people, don't get caught up in the excuses. Excuses change. Patterns don't. If someone disappears every time things get close, that's the truth. If someone fills their life with endless noise to avoid stillness, that's the truth. If someone treats every conflict with anger, that's the truth. The confession is written in the pattern, and when you learn to see that, you stop being fooled by words. So remember this: people don't always tell you their pain, but their patterns will. If you learn to read the repeated behaviors, the way they avoid, the way they cling, the way they overwork, the way they withdraw, you'll learn more than their words could ever reveal. Patterns are silent confessions, and if you have the courage to see them, both in others and in yourself, you'll begin to read souls instead of masks. When you step back and really see people, you realize this: no one is only what they appear to be. Every mask, every silence, every pattern is just a clue pointing to the deeper story of a soul trying to survive. And the more clearly you see others, the more clearly you'll see yourself. That's the gift of these truths. Not just understanding people, but awakening to your own life with honesty and strength. If this spoke to you, stay with us. Watch one of the videos now appearing on your screen and continue the journey of seeing deeper, living wiser, and walking the Stoic path. Thank you for being a part of Stoic Journal, where together we learn not just to survive, but to live with clarity, courage, and compassion.